right, welcome to Screen Time with today's Communiqué. So honored to have Miss Keneasha Scott with K Scott Consulting to join us to have a conversation about what she does. And you might be surprised. You may be in for a few fun facts here today. But before we begin, we do want to give a special shout out and thank you to our sponsor, the Women's Foundation of Arkansas. And so, Miss Scott, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And before we get into our conversation, let's just introduce you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your career path.
Well, I'm Keneasha Scott. I am the Director of Regulatory Compliance for K Scott Consults LLC. We're based out of Little Rock, Arkansas, where we service all 50 states. I basically keep companies in compliance, any regulatory compliance, that's where that comes from, local, state, and federal compliance. We do that by program policy writing, trainings, presentations, audits, inspections, and investigations. That is to keep them out of any government trouble. But the end game is to keep those that work for them safe on the job.
And so, talk a little bit about how you even got into the field of compliance. That's not something that you hear about every day as a career opportunity. So, tell us a little bit about how you got started.
Yes, it's so interesting. People say when they hear from me, they go, I always knew somebody somewhere was doing that, keeping us safe. We always knew that, but they never knew what all took place to happen. But I started out at a manufacturing company when I was 20 years old, Deluxe Video, out on Faulkner Lake Road in quality, looking for a job. I was in college and I worked on the VHS side, and they told us that eventually VHS was going away, so we need to start looking for jobs in DVD. So I graduated college with a degree in criminal justice, and I left to go work in my field because I was like, I am not a quality person. I want to go work in criminal justice. Well, I ended up finding my way back because private employment paid much more money than public. So I went back, and they're like, we still got the same problem. Where are you going to go? So I was like, I want to go work in loss prevention and safety because loss prevention is like security, asset protection, access control.
Mhm.
So in 2004, I was hired to work in that department. It was really just divine grace because that department, that company had loss prevention and safety under the same umbrella. We don't hear that a lot at other places. That's how the safety component came because people go, how does a criminal justice person go to work in safety? I'm like, because it's all together. And I had an amazing boss, and he availed me. I mean, he basically poured dump knowledge into me, and he
Right.
told me, he said, "I think the bug has bit you," and I fell in love. And by 2006, the loss prevention and safety coordinator was leaving, and he asked, "Are you going to apply for that job?" And I'm like, "I don't have the credentials. The credentials I have now, I didn't have then, and other people outside had them." And he spoke such a valuable word over my life. He said, "You can go get those credentials.
Mhm.
What those people cannot do is have the relationship with the employees here that you have because you started here when you were 20." So a couple years later, um, the loss prevention and safety coordinator left, and my boss, an amazing person, he just poured all his knowledge into me. He poured it into me, and he's like, "You ought to apply for that job." And I was like, "But I don't have the experience. I don't have the credentials. Like the credentials I have now, 17 years later, I didn't have those back then." He
Right.
said, "You still need to apply." And I applied, and I'll never forget the morning he promoted me. I had to deal with a major investigation the night before where I upset several people like high up. I have a vivid memory of that. And I thought, well, that's it. I won't be getting that job
Mhm.
because they're going to report me to him, his boss.
Right.
And
Right.
he called me in his office and said, the manner in which you handled that, because you are going to have to go to bat for some of the higher ups and
Okay.
against them. And he said, I'm offering you the job if you want it. And he said, because I think the bug has bit you. So the loss prevention and safety bug bit me
Okay.
17
And
years
so,
ago.
seeing this how the loss and safety prevention bug bit you, right? You are a woman of color. You're working for, a major firm. So what was it in you that made you decide, okay, I need to form a consulting business. I need to hang my shingles out and form this K Scott Consulting? What was that that said, "Hey, I can do it"?
Well, well, I wish I could say it was, oh, I'm great, I can go do this. No, that's not what happened. So that company closed and went out of business.
Okay.
So we went to work. I went to work for our consultants, the people who do what I do now. I
Okay.
went to work for that company who consulted with us. So I went to work for them and became a consultant. Basically, I was doing what I had been doing now for multiple companies,
Yeah.
all over the country. And that company was a small company, sold to a bigger company,
Okay.
and now everybody's fighting for jobs.
Okay.
And I just chose not to be included in the fight. I'd already gone through a company closure, having to lay people off. It was too emotional. I chose not to be in the fight.
Okay.
While I was on maternity leave, there was some backdoor stuff going on, some stabbing in the back and throwing up under the bus. And when
Right.
I came back to work, I'd been back at work for a month, and they said, we've made some changes while you've been gone, and you and another division were one of those changes. So they let us go. And the next day, their competitor had gotten word of what happened. They called me for an interview. So I
Oh,
could have very well walked into got laid off on May 22nd, could have walked into the same pay, everything on May 23rd. But God spoke to me in the middle of that interview and told me, no, you, you want you want so much more. It wasn't that I wanted my own business. I wanted to be able to control my life. I wanted to be able to be available for my children. I
right.
wanted to be there for everything. I had a new baby. I didn't want him going to daycare every day. So what I wanted was not my own business,
Okay.
but to get what I wanted, that was the only way I could get what I wanted, and that was May of 2014.
So I'm sure that there must have
Yeah,
been
May
some,
2014.
I'm sure there must have been some anxiety when you decided that, I need to be in a position to take care of my kids. I don't want my son to go to daycare. This is the step that I need to make. Was there some anxiety? Was there some fear? And if so, how did you
Whew.
get yourself over that hump?
There was extreme anxiety. The good news I tell people, like especially with women who say, "Do I leave my job and go start it?" I'm like, well, I was on severance because it was a layoff. It wasn't a bad terms
Right.
thing, so I was on layoff. I was on severance, and then when severance ended, I was eligible for unemployment. So I knew financially, at least for a few months,
Hmm.
I could figure it out.
Gotcha.
So I was very anxious later.
Okay.
At the time, I thought I'll figure it out. And in that 3 months, it was 3 months of severance and then unemployment.
Okay.
It was like I knew I'd be paid for the rest of the year, basically. So I was like, I got to the rest of the year to figure it out. And if it doesn't work, then I'll go work for someone else. But it was the anxiety of, what if I fail? If
Mm.
I'm the only one if I've got to go work this business to get paid, what if I'm not able to work it to get paid? Then we don't have income coming in. What do I do?
Right.
And so with that severance check and that laptop, that's where my obedience came in.
Mm.
It was one of those where it was like, now is your chance to see, do you really trust God? Do you really trust me? Because I told you to do it.
Mhm.
And when you have a fear of not having enough money, that's
Right.
a valid fear. But
Right.
if you trust me, I'll fix it. That was when my faith was tested to see, what are you going to go do? So, yes, there was extreme anxiety,
Yeah.
fear of failure, fear of a lot of things. But remember, I knew what I wanted. And
Mm.
this was the only way to get what I wanted. And
Right.
God gives us the desires of our heart. So I kept reminding him of his word, like, okay.
Mhm.
So during that time, someone in the industry found out that I was doing this on my own, just by some just strange design. How they found out, they ran into somebody in the store talking, and they reached out to me, and they became my first customer,
Wow.
to the point that I didn't even have a company name yet.
Yeah.
but they were my first customer, and they're still a customer, and they are the safest workplace in Arkansas. I gotta shout that. I have to say that they are. They've won numerous awards for their safety. But yes, they became my first customer, and they pay me every month. They
Right.
said, "This is what we'll do. We'll
Okay.
pay you every month for whatever we need. For
Right.
so we always have you." And to help you, so you know you at least have that much coming in every month.
Exactly. That it's so when you're thinking about what a compliance and consulting firm does, what does a typical day look like for you? I know it's something different every day.
Every
What
day,
a typical day
every
look
day,
like?
every day is something different. I tell people the best way to describe it is to get one sheet of paper. So take a sheet of paper.
Okay.
To get one sheet of paper, Arkansas handles all of it. And here's how this is what happens. So in the forest, sounds like the beginning of a good joke. In the forest, you have trees. A company has to go cut down those trees. For that, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, has to say, yes, it's okay. The Arbor Society says, yes, take down those trees in that area where Keneasha can't even figure out how to get here. They have to send her GPS coordinates because it's so far out in the woods.
Yeah.
So a company comes in, they cut down those trees. They have to have health and safety programs as required by law as to how they will safely do that. They have to have training to use the equipment. So they're out there and they're doing it. Well, then here comes the log truck. So
Right.
now somebody's got to transport those logs. So now you insert Department of Transportation, DOT. They have to comply with this federal law. So here comes Keneasha, making sure that they're doing it safely. Their drivers have been vetted, that they're following all of DOT regulations in order to transport those logs. So
Okay.
that may be me doing training. It may be me writing a program. I may stop and inspect one of them on the side of the road. You know, I may be out driving late at night and see one. That's illegal. That's against regulations. You can't drive a overload overnight at night. You can't drive a weight. You know, it's like it's too big. So then those logs go to a sawmill. So in the sawmill, they got to go cut up these logs. So
Right.
in the sawmill, they are required to follow federal regulations. I might have to go in there and do hearing testing because the sawmill is loud. So let me make sure the employees are not exposed to too much noise.
Okay.
So I go research the regulation, find out it's too loud. Now I got to figure out, let me call an engineer. Can you figure out a way to muffle this sound? And so my engineer buddies come in. They go, Keneasha, I've tried it. I cannot muffle this sound. All right, now it's help. All right, I got to figure out how to keep these guys from being exposed to too much noise. So here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna have to wear earmuffs. Now I can't just wear any earmuffs. Now I gotta go calculate. Well, is this loud? They need this type of earmuffs. So we reach out to PPE vendors, get them earmuffs. Then we gotta make sure they're not having their fingers amputated, processing this stuff through the sawmill. So I go make sure the machines are guarded so they can't get in it. Go through training. Now we got dust everywhere. So insert combustible dust. I got to make sure they got a plan in place to keep that dust. Then when they got all that dust and all that stuff done, now it goes to the paper mill. That's what people laugh about. You know, in Pine Bluff, they start smelling that
Yeah.
smell.
Yeah.
That's the paper mill. In that paper mill, they fall under state and federal regulations. So I started all over again. All right, you're a company. I got to make sure you're following all state and federal laws and your insurance company because now you got people. So I got to make sure you're protected through workers' comp. So even if the feds aren't getting you, workers' comp might be. So I got to make sure they're safe, they're trained, they have programs, they have audits and inspections. And then we get a piece of paper.
Wow. That's a lot.
That's the best way to describe how it's like. I love to promote Arkansas. Like, do you know to get one piece of paper, everything took place right here in Arkansas? It's
Wow.
like that. Just to get one piece of paper, everything took place right here in Arkansas in order to do that. So it's every day is different.
Yeah.
And then that's just to keep workers safe. It's worker protection. So let's say you got some type of discrimination going on with these workers. Now
Mhm.
you got EEOC involved.
Right.
So in the middle of me keeping them safe, they're like, Keneasha, we think we got some racial sexual discrimination. We need an investigation. All right, let me switch safety hat and let
Right.
me go in. Now I've got to investigate an incident or a claim. Now I have to investigate that. So every day is a different day.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
so when you think about the world of compliance, you've mentioned factories, you've mentioned transportation, you mentioned being out in the woods, cutting down trees. So it seems to me like the world that you work in is a male dominated field. And so, what is it like being a woman of color, a woman and a woman of color working in such a male dominated field? What's that experience been like?
I think it was my start
Mhm.
in 99 going to work at this company where I wasn't even old enough. They used to have to plan company dinners around me because I wasn't old enough for liquor to be in the room. So it was all day. I couldn't go to happy hour with them. It
Right.
started out where I was the younger one.
Okay.
It wasn't so much as being the woman or woman of color. It was she was the younger one. He'll go through my
Okay.
boss. It was
Right.
one of those where he would kind of do kind of like what my parents did. He would put me out there with the wolves to see how I would react.
Okay. Okay.
And he would like kind of, and what they were doing, they were instilling something in me to say, go own the room,
Mhm.
go own the room. Very rarely it's sometimes I'm the only woman
Mhm.
in some of these rooms.
Right.
Even in 2021, it's just because it's not a woman dominated society. It's a male dominated society as a result of it.
Right.
And it I have always been firm in the belief that I have just as much authority to be here as you all do.
Mhm.
And over time, I've been able to show that I probably have more um authority to be here than you do
Right.
because I'm only here because you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And
Yeah.
let's talk about being a woman of color.
Right.
I solve a problem. They
Okay.
don't care what I look like.
Gotcha.
They don't care. I'm so sorry. Yes, son. You see what? I see where it's coming from. Oh, okay. He worried me. He said he saw something coming, and we've had this power outage, so I just
Right.
want to be sure.
Right.
See, look, and then I'm a mama, so sometimes I'm always thinking about safety. Like, okay, what happened? What happened? So, what happens is when you solve someone's problem,
Mhm.
they don't see you. They see you as the problem solver. So
Right.
I tell, businesses fall under goods and services. I'm a service provider because I provide a service that solves their problem.
Right.
Even someone who's sexist or racist doesn't care about that because I solve their problem.
Mm.
I've gotten companies out of $100,000 fines with the government.
Yeah.
All they care about is when she sat at the table and went to bat for us on behalf of the government, she got us out of trouble and she fixed it.
Right.
We don't care what she looks like.
Okay.
In the industry, it's kind of a joke. I'm the only black woman. I'm the only company that does everything I do. There are other companies that touch on more environmental, there are other companies that touch on more hazmat. But my criminal justice background, we have an investigative component and a security component because I'm a member of a lot of security organizations. So I'm technically the only one in the whole region that does all of that. But I'm definitely the only black woman, and I'm the only one that's, I still say I'm young. So there's a joke when the government is not allowed to refer a company. They're not allowed to say you're in trouble, you need this person. They are allowed to tell them you can go to this site and find people with the credentials to help you.
Right.
Well, there's a funny joke for the last like 5 or 6 years. They'll slip and call me and say, girl, this man called over here and said, I need the little black girl. And I tell them, that's okay. Because guess what? I'm the only little black girl that does this. And
Right.
if that's all they remember, I got business. And they say, she little, but she loud. Because I am only 5'2". They're like, but she loud. And they go, Keneasha. They're
Keneasha.
talking about Keneasha. So I'm like, even in that, I don't care if I'm the little black girl.
Right.
If that's how they remember me, that's it. So
So
yes.
be it. And so you mentioned a few moments ago that your mentors and your supervisors years ago used to tell you to go in the room, go own the room. And so is that the same advice that you would give another young woman coming up who wants to be in the compliance field? Would you share that same advice with her that was shared with you, or would there be something different?
That's exactly what I would share. My goal, I've said this for the last year. I want Keneasha of 2004. I need her to find me. And I want to be able to open her head up and pour everything I know into her head and tell her spaces to go,
Right,
credentials to get, people to know, tricks to play, like wear your pants when you go,
right,
things like that. I want to be able to do that. And so I tell any young woman who would like, and I've had young women say, I want to be, I ask them, what do you want to do? They start out as like the safety person in the facility and they say, well, I want to be you one day. And I'm like, oh, open your head,
yeah.
plug the cord up. I'm about to start downloading. I love it because that's what was done for me. Some of
Over the past few years, you have started to receive all types of awards and recognitions, from the Women's Foundation of Arkansas to the Little Rock Chamber, being awarded the Minority Enterprise Company of the Year, and on and on. So companies are starting to recognize the great work that you do and starting to
yes,
reward you for that. How does that make you feel?
it's surreal. Every time I say minority owned business of the year. Every time I say that, it's so humbling because remember, that wasn't my goal.
Right,
My goal was to be able to be available for my children and to keep people safe. So the reward is every time I can go to bed and no one's calling me saying there's been an accident or fatality at work. That's the goal. Every day. That's the goal. In my industry, everybody knows K Scott. They nickname me the safety lady. I've never worried about visibility there. To receive these awards in the last few years means multiple things. It means one, that someone outside of your bubble
hmm,
has recognized the fruit of your work. They've said your story itself is amazing, the journey is amazing, and the work you do is important. But they've said, I'm going to reward you for doing something that you're going to do anyway and that you've done for years without awards. What
right.
it also means is imagine this. Remember, nobody really knows that somebody's behind the scenes keeping them safe.
Mhm.
They just know it's happening. So when an award is given to a company like mine, it basically says safety won.
Yeah,
So that's what it does. So when people give me an award, what they're doing is they're validating all of that.
yeah,
And then God puts me in position to receive this validation and this favor because He knows I'm going to talk about Him. Like
right.
I just gave her another stage.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
gave her another place for her to say, God is good, y'all. I just gave her another, because the rocks will not cry out louder than me.
yeah,
I keep saying, they just won't. And I get the, the, the things that he has made happen have been so uh, divine that there's no doubt it was him.
yeah,
There was no doubt. And so what it does, it gives a chance to say, she said, trust him. So, and she showed me how the story ends. Because
right,
look, she went from a severance check and a laptop to minority owned business of the year.
right. Miss Scott, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for just sharing with us your story,
Thank you.
sharing with us the inspiration, sharing with us your faith walk, uh,
Yes,
because it is indeed, in my opinion and my observation, and just listening to you, that it has been a faith walk for
it
you.
has. I
Yeah.
even got the opportunity to, I have so many examples I could give. I'll give one. of what God also does. Sometimes when God gives us a no and a not now,
Mhm.
pay attention because this is what he does for me. He takes me back around and shows me why it was a no.
Mhm.
I just love him. And he
Yeah.
loves us because it's like he may not do that for everybody,
Yeah.
but I'm analytical. I'm like the Peter and the fisherman. Lord, we the experts. How you gonna tell us to go catch some fish? We've been out here all day. So I'm so analytical that he has to do things to me like she'll miss it because she'll overthink it. So
Right.
let me take you back around and show you.
Right.
Um, when the company closed, all of this happened. We got to be on unemployment. So this was the second time I had to be on unemployment. So I knew the process or whatever. Well, 2 years ago, I did some work. I was a liaison for a big grant project through one of the state agencies in order to have companies hire convicted felons. Recidivism is a serious passion of mine in criminal justice. We've got to figure out why do people continue to commit crimes, and we've got to go back and address the root cause of it. Well, the Department of Justice has said one of the root cause of it is because they don't get jobs, and I mean, if you're telling them they have to they've been convicted of a felony, you can't hire them. How are they going to get a job? That's a violation of their parole. Or they're going to go back to an illegal lifestyle. They're going to end up back in prison. So we got to figure out and address it. So this group needed someone who was a consultant that worked with all of these different agencies
Mhm.
and with a criminal justice background. So it's so interesting when they were narrowing down the who to get, I
Right.
was the only one.
Right.
So I did some work for them and it was coming up to like Christmas and I'd billed them and hadn't gotten paid. And I got a call the week after Christmas from them saying, Miss Scott, we're so sorry. We didn't get your check in the mail because the person that needed to sign for it ended up wanting labor early. It was something went on. They needed two signatures. So
Right.
they said, this is so unprofessional, but we need to figure out a way for you to get this check so that we need to figure out a way for you to get this check so that you can get it on this year's income
Right.
because you may have to pay your people now. So since it's getting so close to the year. So they said, would you mind coming and picking up the check? Which, I was like, sure, I'll add that to my schedule. So I went to go get it. I might need Kleenex. So I walked in the building and where they told me to go, you got multiple agencies in this building. So it's Department of Workforce building. That's their main building on University.
Right.
So I got to go find the people in the office they're just using that building.
Okay.
And when I walked in, the Holy Spirit said, pay attention. Well, because of my security mindset, I assume when the Holy Spirit tells me pay attention, I need to be on alert, security alert. So I
Right.
scanned the room, situational awareness, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I was halfway through the building when I realized why the Holy Spirit said pay attention. I had to go get that check, not because of their mistake. It was because God had to take me in that building. In that building is where I had to apply for unemployment.
Mm.
In that building is where I had to go do resume prep on their computers. In that building is where I had to go apply for light bill assistance when our company closed, because that's where they're at as well, in that same building. In that building is where I had to go apply for child care assistance because they're like, you gotta be marketable to go get another job in order to get this unemployment. And I was like, well, I want to do things on my own. They're like, well, you still got to go through this program. And it was belittling and demeaning. They even forced me to take a career readiness test to the point that they even said I must have cheated because I only missed one question. And then when they asked for all my credentials, they said, oh, you're like one of them. So all of that was in that building.
Mhm.
And at the end of the building is where I went to go get my check. So
Mm.
God had to take me. I literally, He takes us on a journey of our life, but
Mm.
some of the bad things in my life had to take place in that building. So that's why that check didn't get signed. Because
Yeah.
if it came in the mail, I wouldn't have been there. So he took me around that whole building to the
Wow.
end of that building and say, now go get your check. I
Wow.
want you to now turn around and see, look how far I brought you.
Woo. Goosebumps.
That they're not paying you at the end of that building.
Yeah.
Look where I brought you. Because when you turn around and get ready to go out, you see all the little signs telling you go there for light bill, go there for childcare, they'll go there for unemployment. And I had a vision of all those things in my visual.
Yeah.
So he took me back to say, just in case you missed it,
Mm. Yeah.
let me take you back and show you.
Woo, that's powerful. That
To
is,
the point that I have my anxiety now is different.
yeah.
Now I'm anxious, wondering, Lord, what you gonna do next? Like, let me hold my chair. Sometimes the phone ring and I'm like, oh, oh, you always doing it so big. What are you gonna do next?
Wow, such a powerful story.
Thank you.
And we want to thank you once again for sharing it, for opening us and letting us in just to get a little peek at K Scott Consults and what
Thank
it is
you.
that you do and the journey that you've been on. And we want to thank you once again for sharing. And
Thank you
so,
for having me.
yes, ma'am. With that, that's a wrap.
Thank you.